Your town isn't broken. It's just run by people who once saw a stop sign and thought, this needs more rules. We're talking ordinances so petty they feel like dares. And trust me, the nonsense you've heard is nothing compared to what's coming next. 1. In one Midwest town, a man learned the hard way that the local government had achieved enlightenment through pure pettiness. They banned whistling after 8 p.m. because one council member insisted it confused the geese. No one has ever explained why the geese were out past their bedtime or why the birds' emotional stability was considered a municipal priority, but the rule stands. A teenager once got a warning for humming too loudly, which apparently fell under the wind-based mouth activity clause. Residents now treat their evening strolls like a silent film marathon, terrified that one accidental note will summon the Noise Enforcement Committee, whose main job is apparently protecting waterfowl from jazz. The whole thing raises a deeper philosophical question. If your peace and quiet depends on the geese not hearing human music, maybe the birds are running the town and nobody's brave enough to admit it. 2. There's a coastal town where hanging laundry outside is treated with the same seriousness other places reserve for arson. One homeowner reportedly got a citation because their beach towel disrupted the visual harmony of the community, which is impressive considering the community is mostly crab shacks and weather-beaten porches. The rulebook actually specifies that laundry must be dried indoors, as if the town were worried that seeing socks fluttering in the breeze might shatter social order. A local woman once tried to fight the fine, claiming she needed the sun to dry her sheets, but the zoning board countered with a deadpan reminder that the sun is not an HOA-approved appliance. Meanwhile, tourists stroll around in swimsuits, dripping seawater everywhere, but apparently that's fine. As long as your underwear isn't airborne, the town considers itself civilized. 3. A small southern town decided it needed to regulate the behavior of chickens with more precision than most places regulate humans. They passed a rule requiring every backyard chicken to be registered, tagged, and photographed for identification. So somewhere in City Hall, there's a file cabinet full of mugshots of confused hens, staring into the camera like they're being booked for tax fraud. One officer admitted the photographs were impossible to tell apart, but the rule remains because procedure is procedure. A man once tried to dispute a complaint by saying the chicken on his property wasn't his. The town clerk triumphantly pulled out the bird's file as if she were unveiling a major criminal indictment. The real mystery is why the birds aren't demanding legal representation at this point, considering they're the only residents expected to carry government-issued ID. 4. In a quiet mountain town, someone decided the most pressing threat to public safety wasn't wildfires or icy roads, but citizens wearing the wrong color on Tuesdays. The rule: no red shirts on Tuesdays inside town limits. The official explanation claims it prevents confusion among volunteer emergency responders, which suggests the responders are extremely distractible or maybe just allergic to matching outfits. One visitor got politely informed by a local shopkeeper that he needed to cover that up or leave, as if his clothing were an offensive political statement instead of a Target clearance find. Another resident reportedly sewed patches over their red jacket to avoid weekly controversy, turning the garment into something resembling a quilt made under duress. The town insists the rule is vital, which is a bold stance for a place where the fire truck is older than the school mascot costume. 5. A desert town once implemented a ban on grocery carts leaving parking lots because, according to the mayor, carts develop wanderlust. The rule requires every resident who wants to roll groceries to their car to sign a temporary custody form acknowledging responsibility for the cart's safe return. One clerk confessed most people ignore the paperwork, but the town remains committed to the idea that carts are at constant risk of escape, like they're emotionally fragile horses. A man once got reprimanded for pushing a cart 50 feet past the invisible boundary line, prompting an employee to jog after him with the urgency of someone recovering nuclear material. The whole system assumes the carts possess some supernatural desire to flee into the desert, which feels flattering if you're a cart, but deeply embarrassing if you're a human participating in this charade. 6. In one rural town, the local cafe sparked a regulation that now lives in their municipal code: a ban on ordering more than 3 modifications to any food item. The rule was passed after one customer demanded a sandwich be made with no bread, no lettuce, no tomato, and no mayo, but extra mayo on the side, which broke the waitress's will to live. The council, instead of addressing the real issue, namely the existence of people who treat menus like choose-your-own-adventure puzzles, simply outlawed excessive requests. A woman was once denied a fourth customization on her oatmeal and told she had reached her creativity limit. The town is convinced this policy has improved restaurant morale, which is true if you define morale as the staff has stopped screaming into walk-in refrigerators during lunch rush. 7. There's a tiny lakeside village where mowing your lawn on Sundays is considered a threat to community harmony. It's not a noise issue. Noise is allowed. The issue is aesthetic relaxation, which the town defines as a spiritual experience requiring the absence of lawn-related activity. One grandfather, trimming a single blade of grass, reportedly triggered a visit from the tranquility officer, a job someone actually holds, who explained that even contemplating mowing on a Sunday disturbs the communal aura. Residents now treat lawn equipment like contraband until Monday morning. It's hard to say what's stranger, the rule itself or the fact that the village believes enlightenment can be achieved through collective grass avoidance rituals. 8. A small tourist town implemented a regulation requiring all shop windows to display at least one item of cheerfulness. The rule doesn't specify what qualifies as cheerful, so store owners have interpreted it with alarming enthusiasm. One hardware store put up a smiling scarecrow that looked like it was plotting something. A dentist displayed a plush molar holding balloons, which is objectively upsetting. A funeral home attempted a basket of rubber ducks, prompting several complaints about emotional whiplash. The town claims the rule boosts visitor morale, though most visitors appear baffled and vaguely frightened by the forced whimsy. Meanwhile, the city council maintains a straight face, insisting that mandatory joy is a cornerstone of civic identity. 9. In a tiny valley community, the city council decided that outdoor cats presented an unpredictable visual experience, which is bureaucratic poetry for "they walk around too much." So they passed a rule: all cats must be leashed outdoors. This resulted in scenes where owners drag deeply offended cats down sidewalks like reluctant toddlers being escorted to school. Animal control officers patrol neighborhoods, reminding people that their cats are free-range at heart but not by law. One officer admitted the rule is unenforceable unless a cat cooperates, which statistically happens never. Meanwhile, the cats appear to be plotting a coup, and frankly, no one would blame them. 10. There's a prairie town where the local government outlawed neon signs after one gas station installed a glowing pink open sign that apparently offended a council member's sense of cosmic balance. The ordinance now bans any light source deemed intense, flashy, or vibrationally disruptive. A bakery's pastel sign was rejected for having too much enthusiasm. A barber put up a wooden sign and still got a complaint because the sunlight reflecting off it was aggressively suggestive. Businesses have resorted to hand-painted placards that look like they were created during a blackout. The rule has turned the town into a sepia-toned museum exhibit, which would be charming if it weren't enforced with the zeal of someone trying to keep the 1950s alive through pure stubbornness. 11. A quiet forest town recently banned feeding ducks at the public pond after a single resident insisted the ducks were becoming entitled. The council didn't question this emotional assessment of waterfowl. They just codified it. Anyone caught offering food to a duck must attend a wildlife responsibility briefing, where an underpaid ranger explains why bread turns ducks into anarchists. A family once tried to argue that tossing a single cracker didn't warrant mandatory re-education, but rules are rules, and apparently tiny crumbs have the power to destabilize ecosystems. The ducks now stare at visitors with the same expression gym teachers use when judging weak push-ups. 12. In a charming Appalachian town, an ordinance requires every mailbox to be identical to every other mailbox. Same shape, same height, same shade of beige described in the code as soft dawn wheat. A man was fined when his replacement mailbox arrived 2 inches too tall, creating what the council labeled visual discord. Another woman painted her mailbox after a bird dropped berries on it, only to learn that touching the exterior in any way constitutes personalization, which is forbidden. Residents now treat mailboxes like sacred relics, polishing them nervously and apologizing to them during storms. The town claims it creates unity. Outsiders might call it a beige-themed cult. 13. A Plains town established a law forbidding anyone from sitting on public benches for more than 12 consecutive minutes, believing it discouraged overly casual behavior. A retiree once received a warning after hitting the 13-minute mark while reading the newspaper. To support active lifestyles, The council installed timers next to some benches, making the act of sitting feel like a competitive sport. Tourists have been startled when a volunteer monitor strolls by with a clipboard reminding them they're approaching their relaxation limit. The rule has achieved one thing. People now hover awkwardly near benches like they're about to propose to someone but keep chickening out. 14. In a historic mining town, window curtains are required to be white or cream so the streetscape appears morally tidy. Yes, the town believes curtain color indicates moral character, which is a fascinating insight into how bored people get when the population dips under 900. A resident once tried to hang pale blue curtains, prompting a formal notice declaring his home visually unruly. Another homeowner used lace curtains with a pattern deemed too expressive, which suggests the council might be censoring fabric emotions now. Meanwhile, the town's most popular attraction is a bar built inside an old mine shaft, but apparently the true threat to community virtue is decorative textiles. 15. One tiny farming town passed a law requiring residents to wave at passing cars, not politely recommending it, requiring it. The official rationale is to maintain neighborly spirit, though enforcing politeness via ordinance feels like something out of a dystopian Hallmark movie. A teenager once got scolded for failing to wave while holding a giant grocery bag, prompting an officer to remind him that community engagement is a two-handed responsibility. Drivers now roll slowly through town, waiting expectantly for the mandatory greeting like royalty surveying loyal subjects. The whole place operates on the assumption that friendliness is something you can force with legal threats, which is ironic, considering nothing kills genuine warmth faster than being told you must perform it on command. 16. In one mountain township, the council decided the real threat to civic order wasn't crime, weather, or infrastructure, but the unregulated placement of garden hoses. So they passed an ordinance requiring every hose to be coiled clockwise and stored at a 45-degree angle facing east, creating the first known instance of municipal feng shui for plumbing equipment. An unlucky resident received a violation after leaving his hose emotionally disorganized, a phrase the inspector said with the seriousness of someone diagnosing a spiritual illness. And another homeowner tried to argue that coiling direction has no effect on property values, only to be reminded that harmonious presentation is a town priority even though half the streets look like they were paved by someone blindfolded. Yet the rule persists because nothing says thriving community like obsessing over hose geometry while ignoring the pothole big enough to swallow a compact car. 17. A picturesque coastal village once banned outdoor wind chimes because a single council member claimed their gentle tinkling caused psychic static, sparking a crusade against all forms of accidental melody. And soon inspectors were patrolling neighborhoods with the confidence of noise sommeliers, deciding which sounds were acceptable and which offended the collective soul. One homeowner received a written notice because her porch swing made a faint squeak that invited chaos, while a fisherman was reprimanded when his boat ropes knocked against metal cleats in what was described as unauthorized maritime percussion. So now, the town spends its breezy afternoons in absolute silence, except for the angry seagulls, who of course remain unregulated because they're too chaotic to subpoena and too loud to fine. 18. A desert suburb created a rule requiring all residents to keep at least one approved desert plant in their front yard to celebrate regional identity. But the list of approved plants consists entirely of species that look like they were designed by nature to stab people. So homeowners now decorate their lawns with cactuses that appear to be actively plotting murder. A retired teacher tried to substitute a plastic cactus, arguing it was symbolically authentic, but was fined for botanical dishonesty, a phrase no human being should ever have to hear in a democracy. And another resident who planted the wrong variety accidentally triggered a month-long investigation into whether his yard was reflecting the correct cultural spirit, which is a very dramatic way of saying someone bought the wrong succulent at a garden store. 19. In one farming community, the town banned selling baked goods at yard sales after a single resident insisted that brownies sold without official oversight could destabilize the local food economy, leading to a regulatory framework so intense it feels like the FDA got trapped inside a bake sale. Neighbors now need permits, ingredient lists, and random inspections for treats nobody actually wants, and one elderly woman got written up for offering cookies described as structurally inconsistent, which is a bold way to say her baking was mediocre. while another family abandoned selling pastries entirely because the paperwork to sell a muffin resembled the process for acquiring a passport, proving yet again that small towns will regulate anything if you give them a clipboard and a slow afternoon. 20. A quaint lakeside settlement introduced a rule requiring all dock owners to repaint their piers annually using only the town's sanctioned color, Lake Fog number 7, which is visually indistinguishable from wet cardboard. And any attempt at creativity is met with fines, drama, and accusations of aquatic disruption. One resident painted his dock a cheerful blue and immediately received a citation accusing him of atmospheric arrogance, while another tried to get permission to use a slightly lighter shade and was advised that such deviation risked distracting boaters. Even though the lake is so small, you could paddle across it in a kiddie pool, leaving the town stuck in a monotone waterscape that looks like a hardware store paint sample nobody wanted. 21. In a wooded hamlet, residents are legally required to bring their trash bins back inside within 15 minutes of collection, because apparently the presence of an empty plastic container is enough to unravel civilization. One shift worker got reprimanded because he was asleep during pickup hours and thus failed the Trash Olympics. And another resident complained the rule was impossible to follow when the hauler arrived unpredictably, only to be told that responsible citizens anticipate possibilities, as if normal people schedule their entire lives around the vibe of sanitation trucks, resulting in a community where neighbors sprint down their driveways in pajamas to retrieve bins as though competing in the least exciting Hunger Games imaginable. 22. A sleepy foothill town requires all porch lights to be under 20 watts, claiming any brightness beyond gentle luminescence constitutes light pollution, even though the nearest city is hours away, and the town already sits under a sky so dark you can see satellites questioning their life choices. One homeowner installed a brighter bulb because raccoons kept treating his porch like a nightclub. But an inspector appeared the next morning and issued a fine for aggressive illumination, while a woman with a motion-activated light was told her setup created intermittent disruption patterns, which is bureau speak for "it turns on." So now the entire town navigates nighttime like medieval villagers, bumping into furniture and pretending the rule makes sense because the council printed it on official paper. 23. In one old railroad town, the council insists all residents must keep their house numbers visible at all times. But visible means visible from the exact vantage point of the council president's preferred walking route, which is a level of micromanagement normally reserved for movie directors. A man whose house faced a slight angle got reprimanded because the number looked too interpretive, and a woman with decorative lettering was informed that her numbers were artistically misleading, leaving homeowners to constantly adjust signage like they're participating in a scavenger hunt designed by someone with mild spite and too much spare time. All because the town leadership believes the Postal Service is incapable of turning their heads even slightly. 24. There's a woodland town where string lights are banned after January 2nd because festive ambiance breeds complacency, a statement that suggests the council fears joy the way others fear hazardous materials. One resident forgot to unplug a single strand on January 3rd and received a warning labeled holiday overextension, while a couple hosting a winter party was accused of seasonal manipulation for putting up warm-colored bulbs. And now people approach outdoor lighting like bomb disposal, carefully, quietly, and with full awareness that failure could result in a citation accusing them of trying to reignite the holiday spirit, which the town apparently treats like an invasive species. 25. A riverfront village bans swimming after 6 p.m. Not for safety reasons, but because late evening swimmers invite mischief, though no one can define what specific mischief aquatic people bring. One tourist wading ankle-deep at 6:04 was approached by a volunteer safety warden with the authority of someone guarding national secrets, and a local teen who skipped a rock too close to cutoff time received a warning for water-related ambiguity, whatever that means. So residents now obey the rule like the river turns carnivorous at sunset, even though the only real danger is tripping over the sign explaining why swimming becomes illegal the moment the sun starts clocking out. 26. In a prairie settlement, the council passed a law requiring every yard to contain no fewer than 3 natural objects, which somehow includes rocks, but excludes decorative stones unless they're authentically rugged, a qualification no one has successfully defined. One homeowner showcased beautiful polished stones and was fined for geological pretentiousness. And another tried to argue that a bird bath counted, only to be told that functional nature is not true nature, which sounds like something a philosopher would mutter before vanishing into the woods. So now residents scatter random rocks across their lawns like they're performing avant-garde landscaping to satisfy a rule that feels spiritually inspired by a toddler who likes collecting pebbles. 27. In a sleepy apple orchard town, walking dogs without tiny reflective vests is prohibited because animals must share responsibility for nighttime visibility. A beautifully deranged idea that assumes pets understand traffic laws. One golden retriever's vest slipped off mid-walk, and the owner was given a warning titled Canine Visibility Failure, while a cat on a harness was issued a vest 4 sizes too big, turning it into a disgruntled high-visibility loaf. And now locals regularly parade their glowing pets through the streets like a discount cyberpunk festival, all to satisfy a rule written by people who clearly believe the future belongs to reflective fashion. 28. A historic river town outlawed outdoor thermometers after a heated, pun fully deserved, council debate in which one member argued that visible temperature readings influence emotional climates. So now anyone who wants to know the weather must either guess, look at the sky like a meteorological wizard, or check their phone indoors behind drawn curtains. One resident hung a tiny decorative thermometer shaped like a fish and received a violation accusing him of ambient informativeness. And another was warned because her weather app notifications were audible on her porch, meaning the town has reached a point where even hearing the temperature is considered contraband knowledge. 29. And finally, no, not finally in the list, finally in the sense of we've reached peak weird, there's a small rural community that banned standing still in public parks for more than 90 seconds because loitering energy disrupts recreational flow, resulting in scenes where people pace in slow, awkward circles like confused Sims trying to avoid triggering a fine. A teenager stopped to tie his shoe and received a stern lecture on stationary behavior, and an elderly man stretching before a jog was informed his warm-up appeared philosophically idle. So the townsfolk now treat park visits like cardio workouts performed under duress, all because the council decided motion equals virtue and stillness equals suspicious intent. And that's your guided tour through small-town nonsense. Proof humans can make rules out of pure boredom. Drop the most deranged one in the comments, and hit like if you survived.